You're listening to Yoked, Conversations with Real-Life Yogis. I'm Kelly Sunrose, your host. The mission of this podcast is to share the teachings of yoga as applied to everyday life by real people through interviews, conversations, Q&A sessions, and more. Learn more at yokedpodcast.com. Hello, my dears. Thank you so much for being here today for Yoked, Conversations with Real-Life Yogis. I'm your host, Kelly Sunrose. And today I'm also the guest. Surprise! For today's show, my friend, colleague, and past guest of the show, Fawn Williams, interviewed me. And in this conversation, we talk about everything from gardening to pregnancy to adventures and philosophy of teaching. It was fun. I hope you enjoy. And just a reminder, if you have a question or a topic you would like covered on the show, please send an email to me at sunroseyoga@gmail.com. Also, I have this super fun community project in the works, and I would love your help and participation. Could you please answer the following questions, which will be shared in a future episode? 1. Why do you practice yoga? 2. What are your most potent practices? You can send your answer along with your name and your location globally to me at sunroseyoga@gmail.com. You can do this in writing, but it would be super amazing if you created a voice memo on your smartphone and sent it to me via email. Please introduce yourself like, I'm Kelly from Portland, Oregon, at the beginning of your clip. Thank you very much. Now for some news and reminders. So some of you know this already, but I am expecting a baby. And I will be taking a 2-month maternity leave from my in-person group classes and privates for the month of July and August. However, I will be continually updating the Wildcat Yoga Club during that time. So, even though I'll be technically on maternity leave, there are many ways we can stay connected and practice together. You can join me in the Wildcat Yoga Club, practice with me on Yoga Anytime, or purchase a meditation or course for download in my online shop. Just a reminder that 15% of all proceeds for the month of May will go to Oceana and Families for Children. Thanks, everybody. For details on all of this, head on over to the show notes at yokedpodcast.com. Now on with the show.
I came up with this idea of turning the tables on you because you hold space for everybody else to talk and to share, but also to kind of help change the world and share their gifts. And it's sort of me giving back to you to ask you questions and maybe to go in a direction you hadn't thought of. But we'll see. I didn't plan purposely.
I love it.
And I was inspired by, I was in a show in November, and the director had me do a monologue. It was just like a minute and a half in the middle of all this chaos. It was me, and I was like climbing on a rope and flailing around. And I was listening to the monologue being read in my ears in headphones. And I thought, oh, can I listen to it for a while before the show? No. I don't want it rehearsed. I don't want it overworked. I don't want it, I want it fresh, and I want you to sound like you're just reading it for the first time.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, it was really like putting me out there in a really raw, awesome way. It was fun. It freed me up. I was like, oh, I can be myself in a different way. It felt like there's trust in me as a performer and for me to show up, and just like it felt more honest and raw. So that kind of was my initial inspiration to ask.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah.
I know it's hard for me to be on this side and not to be like, thank you for coming today. Thank you for joining us.
Your script, air quotes. Yeah. So we have so much in common. It's nice to like even just sit together and have the time. So that's part of it too.
Amen.
Just like I cannot ever find time to spend with wonderful women that I have a lot in common with. We're all really, we're really pulled. And so you're into gardening.
I am.
How's your garden this year so far?
So far, well, it's been weird. So, we're about a month behind where we were last year and the year before. Something that I only know because I use a hashtag on Instagram for my plum tree that I like referenced a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, wow, this event was happening an entire month earlier, not only last year, but the year before that. And so that's sort of interesting to like just observe those kind of changes. We have lots of things started indoors. We started a lot of things from seed, and then we put them under some grow lights, and they're like, that's where they will stay until Mother's Day, most of them. But my garden beds themselves, this was the first winter that my husband and I were like organized enough to plant some cover crop, and we have this mix in there, and so the soil has been receiving some nutrients over the winter, and I'm excited about that.
Ooh.
I know, I'm excited for the weather to kind of shift. It was a really weird winter.
Well, from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's like mega kapha time and pregnancy. I taught a workshop for teachers a few months ago about like how to work with pregnant women. Yeah. And that's an interest of mine. So Ayurvedically, you're both kapha and pitta as being in pregnancy. So it might have you a little bit more like the kind of kapha imbalance might come up, even though I know like me, you're more vata.
It's interesting. This pregnancy, especially, I have very much felt the kapha, the earth, water sensibility, and it's been a really nice change. I was so vata'd out when I was pregnant with Una, and I mean, like, to where I don't think I slept a single night through from the beginning. I was just so flooded with worries, and I was also not, I mean, I had been studying Ayurveda for like 7 years at that point, and I was not engaging with the practices. I was eating raw vegan, which for me, I mean, like, I am not a good candidate for raw vegan, even in summer. And, and so, it was just a very vata time. And also that led into, a very anxious postpartum time because of all the space that's left from the baby leaving. And so this go around, it feels really different. And normally I have a little resistance to the kapha time, like,
right,
you know, where my body's like, no, I want to go, I want to move, I want to be like the wind. And it feels correct. I have not been fighting it.
I love that. I love that. And even just gazing at you now, you seem pretty rooted.
It's funny.
Yeah. That's a nice shift, I bet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm teaching classes the past few weeks. It's been such pulling teeth to get students into a more vibrant space where the weather isn't just dragging them down, it seems like. So I've been having people do a lot of back bends.
I've been hearing about this.
Like, they don't want any more. But yet they come to class and they're very... I ask people to name words and go around the room about what this latest storm makes them feel like. I think it was yesterday. And the words were just oppressive, apathetic, detached, depressed. I mean, all of these, like, very negative experiences for just the day.
Yeah.
One of our kind of normal spring days.
Right.
Which, for me as a Vata, is very soothing. I'm like, oh, yes, just a little bit more rain.
Yeah.
Just to keep me down to earth and rooted. But, you know, it's interesting to help facilitate kind of seasonal when you're not affected in the same way.
Yes.
Right. So your pregnancy, this is number 2. And so your family's going to be big. Did you guys always want, like, I mean, in this day and age, it feels like 2 is like a big family.
It's true. It's interesting. Like, from when my husband and I first got together 15 years ago, we had our first date 15 years ago, 2 nights ago. And
happy anniversary.
Thank you. We had always talked about, you know, if it was possible to have one child biologically and then always to adopt any subsequent children, mostly for environmental reasons. And we started down that road when Una was about 2 or 3, and there were just so many obstacles to adoption. I mean, I guess I should have known this. I knew it on some level. And I just got the transmission that, like, this wasn't our path. And so I kind of, like, let things, I was like, maybe the geometry of this family is good. Maybe we're a 3-person family and that feels right. And then it's so interesting with, like, you know, those kind of decisions and with Dharma in general, you know, I've had this sense before, and I felt it again when I had sort of said, oh, maybe we just won't have any more kids. I felt like, oh, I'm taking the easy way out, and it's not my Dharma. I felt like there was this sense like, oh, I'm just not doing the thing because I'm just sort of like slumped over in the chariot around this. I'm like, whatever. And so it was very much this like decision where I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace the unknown, the mystery, and go for it. And then I had 2 miscarriages that they were very hard physically and emotionally, but I feel like they were also very necessary in order for this baby to be born. I had, like, there were some patterns, some samskaras that I very much was confronted with in those pregnancies and miscarriages that had to happen. And I mean, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, and I wouldn't even wish it on myself again if I, looking back. But now I can see, like, that was totally necessary. That had to happen in order for this baby to happen. And it's funny because, like, each time, with each one I was like, oh, things are good. Things are really easy right now. Maybe we don't need another maybe I don't need to complicate my life with, pregnancy and birth and having another baby, another human. And each time I felt like that, I was like, oh, that's not true. Like, that is something I am just telling myself in this moment. Yeah. So it's been really interesting to be back in this space and growing our family. And now it's like, yeah, this... Here we are, alive in this vibrant chaos, because I also got a puppy at Christmas, and it's a lunatic. She's a lunatic.
Bring it on.
Oh my gosh.
You're just bringing it on.
But so, yeah, this feels... Yeah, like, it's big for now and for our part of the United States and in the world. And we'll just see how it all shakes out.
Maybe it'll be a really shy kid that's quiet.
That's what we keep saying, maybe. Well, it's funny too because, like, one of my parenting challenges is I am fully an introvert. I'm outgoing and I like humans, but I'm fully an introvert. And something I wasn't expecting from parenthood is just, like, all the sound coming at you all the time.
Yes.
And how that really has been a part of my practice.
I love that. That's a really good description of the struggle that I'm having lately with my son, who's so active all of a sudden. He always was. He's 4.5. And he's having a spurt of energy and in his body, and he has a lot of power in his body. And I find myself just wanting more quiet more often. And it's really it's a fine line of, like, well, I appreciate the power in your body, and I believe you ought to do something with your energy that's physical. But if I hear the stomping down the hallway one more time when I'm in Janu Shirshasana, because I'm working on Todd's homework, our sequencing group, like, I'm trying to breathe. This is a difficult pose. Can I have, like, no stomping? So it's, we're dealing with the sound. Yeah. And I just imagine, like, wow. And you're really making me think and question, like, am I rationalizing not having another child because I could say that would be one reason. The noise.
I hear you. Oh my gosh.
Noise. And we're so privileged to make a choice. But I'm not sure now talking to you. I think is it a series of justifications that are actually legit? Is it the mind? Right. So with the physical shifts, and I see you a lot for yoga practice, which is so nice. Did you have this much continuity in your yoga practice throughout your first pregnancy, or how does that differ? Is it the same?
Yeah, when I was pregnant with Una, I had my practice was much different than it is now. That was 7 years ago, and I practiced an Anusara based flow practice primarily. So it was very physical, lots of muscle, lots of engagement, lots of complicated shapes. And like I was podcasting then and posting classes, and so I have a lot of photos of myself in poses during that pregnancy that I don't do not pregnant now, like I wouldn't do in my unpregnant body now. So it was just really different. Like it was much more regimented than I am in this pregnancy. I was, like I said, eating a raw vegan diet, high raw, high vegan diet for that pregnancy. And so it was I was in a more rigid space around certain things. So I practiced right up until I gave birth. I was at 24-Hour Fitness lifting weights the morning I went into labor.
Yeah.
Like,
I can picture that.
Oh my God. I'm just like,
really
jeez.
Yeah.
And this pregnancy, I have to practice. Like, I have some SI joint instability and some other, just pelvis requirements that, so I have to do my practice every day in order to walk, in order to function. But it looks really different.
Yeah.
I mean, longer holds, more sukha, more ease, like built into each shape, even when there's full engagement. So it looks different, feels different.
It sounds like, and you can say I'm wrong or right, but it sounds like your practice has deepened, perhaps, and that, that's really affecting how you can flow a little bit easier with the reality of of being pregnant is for most bodies. You got more flexible. You do need more stability. And then for yoga teachers, especially, because the practice is so much flexibility built into it. So it sounds right on. I mean, from that you're evolved and you're listening to that. It's interesting to picture what I was doing too back when I was pregnant was similar. It was pretty flowy, pretty fast. I remember getting stuck in chaturanga, like at 8 months pregnant, leading a group. Just like, I have to put my knees down because I'm stuck here. And after I had my kid, started leading prenatal classes, I just realized, holy moly, like probably a lot of that could have been taken out and refined. And pregnancy was a lot harder on the body than I expected, even though I felt pretty good, thanks to hormones, probably. It's quite a demand.
It's interesting too, like, I very much felt this rebellion, or this like rebellious spirit when I was pregnant with Una. Like, no one's gonna tell me I can't do whatever. I mean, like, I was doing handstands like when I was at term. Like, what the hell? And it was more of this, like, because there are some guidelines from various schools of yoga about how and what a pregnant body should be up to during pregnancy. And I very much was in the space where I was like, men wrote these. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to, like, what the hell do they know? Mm-hmm. No one's going to tell me. And it felt very much like someone patting me on the shoulder being like, you're fragile, you're pregnant, you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And then in between, you know, I dropped so much deeper into my practice that I felt things differently, where I was like, oh my God, when I breathe through that nostril, I feel it in my right ovary.
Yeah.
And like the power of the practice was just so much more apparent to me. And I was like, this is not to be fucked with. Mm-hmm. Like, for real.
Especially pranayama. And that is a lot of times counterindicated.
Yes.
Right? You don't need a whole bunch of that going on. I mean, it's our medicine. It's our strongest dose.
Yeah.
And that's,
And even, you know, just in very simple shapes, I would get a sense of, like, you know, feeling things. I was like, oh, definitely need to practice this differently.
Nice.
And not from, you know, it didn't feel external.
Good.
It felt very much like, and things that, and I very much had the sense, like, just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is a difference, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a culture around that. I've had yoga teachers come to my prenatal groups and refuse out loud accommodations or modifications based on ease and pelvic stability specifically. Mm-hmm. You know, it's thoughtful. They could do what they want later, but it's just a funny thing to remember. Like, I was pushing boundaries by offering modifications, and like so much so that it was like offensive almost. They felt like defensive about the way that they wanted to do things. So that's interesting to hear your rebel spirit was with your first pregnancy more.
Yeah.
And now you're softening to what is now. This kind of this earthy, watery experience of pregnancy, which it is.
Yeah.
And there's some drive there. There's definitely, a creative drive and that ebb and flow of like, of the family drive. Like, we're going to cultivate this, your garden, or we're going to make this thing together. And that takes a lot.
It does.
So I was just reading on your recent Instagram post about your podcast with Laura, that you are leading an advanced teacher training. That's exciting. Yeah. Oh. And is this the first time that you've offered that, or is it just my first time reading?
Yeah, no, it will be the first time.
Yay. That's exciting.
I'm really excited about it.
Good for you.
I have, a group of students, a collection of students who've been working with me for a long time.
Yeah.
Around the world who are, skillful yoga teachers, and the work that we've been doing together has really inspired me to sort of pull together the curriculum or the curricula that we've been doing over the past 5 or so years to create this advanced teacher training. And
I noticed it was limited in group, and I always think of like the yoga in air quotes industry. I hate that calling it that.
Yeah.
That we belong to. That why would you want to limit it? And there's not like you can't monetize it as. You're not going to take over the world, Kelly.
No, I know.
With your with your online program. What's the limit for? Like, what's your thinking behind that?
When I'm involved with an engagement like that, in an immersive practice, I want to be really available to my students for what comes up, what inevitably comes up. And, whether that's, questions, objective questions about the content itself. I want to be clear and be able to handle everything that comes at me. But then also the emotional component where the teacher-student relationship is important, and in those settings, which can be so vulnerable when you're a student, I want to be available. Mm-hmm. And 10 feels like a good number. That is a number that I have some experience with in my immersions, and that way the students can really connect with each other, mm-hmm. because that's another big part of it. Mm-hmm. The conversations that come out and the questions that come up are what bring the teachings to life. Yeah. And if people feel like they're just one in a seat, or they don't know how many other students there are, or, who the other people are, it feels less safe to ask hard questions and to really engage with the other people. And that was really important to me, like the relationship, among the students and among me as the teacher and all of the students is really important.
I like 10. I was just thinking in my head, like 10's, it's nice because if it's smaller than 10, it's the same voices that you can hear mm-hmm. all the time, it depends who the group is. And I'm sure mm-hmm. with your group, it'll be all the right people, right? Mm-hmm. We hope for just all the right people in anything, yeah. Right? And then, but if it's 12, you could lose track of a couple people, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, 10 sounds pretty nice, even though, 25 would make a whole lot more money. That's not the goal. Yeah. That's not, thankfully, everyone's MO in the yoga industry, quote unquote. I love that you've cultivated an organic curriculum, but you've had this time to kind of codify. That's the organic mm-hmm. part, right? Your drive and your projection into the future. Mm-hmm. There's that pitta, right? And the industry part, but it's taken you time, and you've tried lots of things and explored, mm-hmm. and you don't have a lot of overhead with an online mm-hmm. program either. So why, Yeah. It's just very honest, it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the relationship is important. Mm-hmm. And I was having a conversation with my teacher, Kira Ryder, a while back, and she said something about, all it takes is one student. You just need one student to really, it can all happen with just one student. Yeah. And I just, the cultivation of community is really part of my work as a teacher, and just having that to be a component or an aspect of the learning.
And you've been involved with a few teacher trainings over the years with colleagues and things, and maybe not colleagues too, but people have asked you and invited you to participate as a teaching artist or teacher. Yeah. And so you've seen a few things and had some experiences that probably formed this next offering for you. So you're relying on all of that. It's thoughtful.
Yeah, I've been really lucky to participate in some really great teacher trainings and also to just, be with enough teachers. I practice with enough teachers and then also hear from students about what's happening out there, and yoga teacher trainees about what's available, to know that there's a need for this offering, and that also feels like a necessary component, because there are times when, we're pulled to offer something just because we want to offer it. Like, oh, I want to teach this. And if there's not the need, then it could be all force in that scenario. And I've certainly done that myself, where I'm like, I really want to teach this material, and I don't know who the students will be, and I had to experiment with that in order to know that doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't.
No. And here I feel like, oh, there's a need. I can picture the students, and there's just a feeling of correctness around that.
Well, I think we've covered we've touched on a few things, and I'm excited for your baby. And your garden.
Thank you.
And I know you had to say no to some things to say yes to some things along this journey. So blessings and peace and lots of rest and water.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Soak and...
Thanks so much for listening to today's podcast. Complete show notes are available at yokedpodcast.com. Please feel free to connect by emailing me at sunroseyoga@gmail.com. Today's episode is made possible by the Wildcat Yoga Club, our online yoga community. The clubhouse contains an ever-expanding library of audio and video practices, plus lectures, tutorials, and video Q&A sessions, plus monthly online workshops in meditation, active listening, and embodied voice. Membership also includes discounts on all courses, retreats, and products in the Sunrose Yoga shop. All of this for $15 a month or $150 per year. Connect with the yoga of real life by visiting www.wildcatyogaclub.com. Thanks.